Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Raptors Weekly Podcast, the most inconsistent version of podcast that I do. We're here to talk about the Raptors on the heels of their West Coast road trip that they struggled, especially towards the back end. And, there's like the former and the latter version of it. There's very good, there's very bad. Post trade, they start out 3-1, very encouraging. The last half of it, they've been 0-3. They're now 3-4, a losing team again, 28th in defensive rating since the trade was made. Still a very good offense, but we're looking at a Raptors team that is still miraculously in flux. To talk about that team, emerging numbers and trends, play styles, all that kind of stuff, my dear friend Louis Zatzman, who these podcasts have been dubbed Niles and Frazier talking basketball before. So we hope to elicit some sort of emotion regarding that. Louis, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. These are not just vehicles to elicit emotion. They're also sort of emotion dumps for me when it comes to basketball. I have a full pot of tea that's been steeping for about 20 minutes. I'm sure it'll be gone before we're halfway through the pod. I've been excited. I've been excited for this. I've been looking forward to us chatting ever since the trade.
You see, I have a little I like Raptors therapist. I'm yours as
Yeah.
well. I am your basketball
Yeah.
therapist to some degree. You come to me and you say, I have these ideas and thoughts I'd like to clear up. Would you like to
I think
clear
that's
any of
true.
them up now?
Yep. I think now, I mean, we're going to do it now over the length of this thing. I don't have anything right off the bat, but we're definitely going to be. I'm on the couch right now. Like, I look like I'm wearing clothes. There's sweatpants on beneath this, so I'm on the couch.
Did you know I'm wearing pajama pants actually? Did you know that the new drip and like the new fashion to play like at basketball courts, kids like to play in pajama pants now. Like if you show up to the court, the gym, and you have like your maybe you're wearing LeBron's, maybe you're wearing Kyrie's, whatever, like your shoes on, you got your tank top, your shirt, whatever you play basketball. You're drippy if you're wearing pajama pants. That's like the new kids play basketball in pajama pants.
I thought that was like I've seen Filipino guys doing that for a long time.
Maybe they're like
Tucked into the socks?
Not necessarily.
All right. So they're ripping off the Filipinos, just changing the socks up.
I'm gonna have to ask Josh about that. He's the Filipino delegate of the podcast. Yeah. Okay. So Raptors.
Yeah.
That's I haven't talked to you like for public consumption since the trade had happened. Can you just give me your, high wire look down at what's happening below?
Yeah. So I think they're pretty good now. The offense is spectacular. The team makes sense. The future outlook makes sense. The problems remain dramatic. And nothing is settled. We might, midway through this podcast, find out that the whole team we're talking about doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Good thing we're live. So a lot of stuff, man. A lot of stuff. Could you imagine trying to pitch this team in an elevator pitch to someone? It would be very hard to explain in a sentence or less.
For comedic effect, I would say, well, since this trade happened, they have a guy averaging 24 points on 61% shooting, 67% from three, and 80% from the free throw line, who also is breaking down defenses consistently. He has been the second highest volume, second most efficient scorer in the NBA since the trade happened. He's been incredible. We're going to trade that guy. That would be the pitch, right? It's a hard pitch. It was easy when it was 3-1 and you're like, damn, this makes sense. But then we see what happens is that the Raptors are a team who a lot of the guys on the roster, fewer than it used to be, have seen what it looks like to play without a center. We've seen that, the amount of the physical toll the players take on trying to cover up for that spot. And we have like a little 3-game or 4-game sample size where they just get obliterated. And they're like, we need that center. We need that guy there. And it completely undoes the momentum up to that point.
If there's one thing the Raptors learned maybe from the trade, I would say it's largely that having sub-rotation caliber guys swapped out for high caliber rotation guys really helps the team. Precious Chua, for all that I believed in him, was not performing particularly well for the Raptors, right? Malachi Flynn was not performing well. And RJ Barrett, sucking up all those minutes, has been phenomenal. And then Jakob Poeltl, who has been great since the trade, goes down, and Thad Young is playing all these minutes. Again, all respect to Thad, but he's not a rotation level guy. So they just have guys playing minutes who shouldn't be playing minutes in the NBA right now. That's fine. That's life. But I don't think it changes my outlook on the team, right? When the team's ready to be good again, when the cards fall, I don't think we can expect them to be doing that. So I don't factor the losses so much into my analysis. I'm really looking at wins and lessons here. I'm going to use that phrase so many times, man.
Wins and lessons. Okay, well, give me the elevator pitch then. Yours sounds like it'll be more compelling than mine was.
Yeah, so I think this team is the offense is really sustainable, right? They are going to be scoring very consistently. Not just Pascal Siakam. I really like how Quickley has fit in. I'm not certain. I believe Barnes or RJ Barrett's start. He's been just basketball perfection. But even if it drops down a little bit, I really like his ability to do things nobody else on the roster can. It makes sense. They have rim pressure now. They have shooting. They have big screening. They have huge initiators. Looking at some numbers since the trade, they have scored more than a point per possession in pick and roll, in handoff, in the post, and in isolation. That's the pitch, right? We're diverse. We're variable. We score well.
It's a good pitch. Diverse, variable, we score well. The thing that I worry about offensively immediately is that, and this is something that has emerged, the points per game jump that Scotty Barnes has made this season. And Scotty has been fantastic. It's a historic jump made by a jump shooter. Like, we really don't see it happening. Basically, if Siakam goes and they don't get the requisite scores for like inside the arc coming back, I think that it becomes a lot less diverse, variable, and effective, because an offense led by Scotty and Immanuel Quickley is going to be on the outskirts of the paint a lot of the time based on live dribble creation. That is something I wonder about. That is something like I would be very interested to see over time, especially depending on who's coming back. Because if it's like Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes and whatever the hell else, then I still think like, yeah, the rim pressure is going to rely a lot on Scotty if he finds a matchup that he likes, because he is want to kind of drift out with the jump shot working. He'll hang out on the perimeter a lot. And then Immanuel Quickley also will do that. These are not bad things. These are just facets of the offense that they employ. And if it's like coming back from Indiana and it's like Nembhard, Healed, whatever the hell, it's just like Pascal offensively is very important. Like, the numbers are crazy right now. And his numbers have been crazy for about a month and a half, almost 2 months, especially with that 3-point shot rubber banding from, he shot 9.6% over a 15-game sample. And now he's shot in, I think, 58%, 30 of 58 over like just an insane, like, I think 16 or 17 game sample now. I wonder what the offense looks like without him. I think he's really important to what they do now, the diversity of it. And yeah, everything remains up in the air. Very confusing.
I think Scotty may not be ready to step into that, 20, 15 drives a game role right away. But I saw the vision against Utah last night. Like, he had some unbelievable drives and wasn't turning his back like the whole way, facing the rim, going off 2 feet, and it's either finish or foul. So I saw it. And the numbers, I mean, obviously, the numbers over today's the 13th, so 13 days of sample are not helpful. But Toronto's offensive rating has been higher with Siakam off the court than on since the trade, right? 125 with him off, 118 with him on. I think they can survive offensively if they get back, rotation level guys. Like if they get back Buddy Hield, for example, I don't think the offense is going to plummet all of a sudden to the depths in which they existed before they acquired Quickley and Barrett. I see the vision without Siakam. I obviously think they're better with him. And I do wonder, this is crazy, alternate universe thinking, but say the Raptors went something like, 5-1 on this road trip, which not that out of the realm of possibility. Do you think the entire conversation around Siakam is different? Not for us as fans and media, for the front office. Do you think that could have changed the front office's mind about keeping him?
Maybe. Like, because this front office very clearly likes the idea of making the playoffs, having a chance at like those extra games, not only from a revenue standpoint, but from like a Scotty reps in big games standpoint. Like that kind of stuff is important. RJ reps in big games, Immanuel Quickley reps in big games as the lead guard. That kind of stuff is really important. And if they had vaulted themselves into an opportunity, I think it would have made a difference. We just saw it with who they played last night, right? Like the Jazz, however many games they've won in the recent like handful of games, it's been crazy. They're up to 20-20 now after looking like one of the worst teams in the NBA to start the season. Yeah. And I'm sure that changes how they view Sexton. That changes how they view Markkanen. And as much as you want to look at like the tape like we do, as much as you want to look at the numbers like we do, the way that professional scouts do and all that kind of stuff, it's if games happen and you win games, it moves people. Like that's just kind of how it is. But as it stands and the way that it turned out, like the Raptors, a bit of bad injury luck, underperforming their talent on defense, it doesn't look like they'll make the playoffs. It doesn't look like they'll be in that kind of contention. And this team, if you're not making the playoffs with Pascal playing out of his mind on offense, I should say, if you're having, impressive stuff happening with younger guys who are either restricted free agents or locked up long term, you have an opportunity to roll the dice on a trade of your star, one of your stars, Pascal Siakam, and try and reshape the team in an image that makes sense going forward. That is cheaper going forward. That is all the basketball economic considerations and all that kind of stuff. That seems to be like the linchpin.
Which is why it sucks so much, because they finally make sense now. For the first time in years, they finally make sense now. But I understand, you have to, maybe not have to, but like you say, there's a lot of considerations that are pushing in one direction. When I sent you the message about wanting to do this, the idea was to talk about who they were with Quickley, Barrett, and Siakam, right, and Barnes. That was what I was hoping for. They had just won a game. They'd just beaten Cleveland, held on in the fourth quarter. It was a really exciting start. Maybe this is the era that never was, we'll find out. But okay, so what I actually meant to ask though, before we dove into the big picture, quickly, ball, future star?
No, not, wait, okay, so wait, what does future star mean to you? Is that like an all-star selection? Is that
starter upon whom you can rely to create advantages from a standstill in the half court consistently?
Okay. We have different definitions of star, firstly.
That was an insane definition. That was, who knows what that was.
So I would be surprised if Immanuel Quickley over the next however many years makes like more than one all-star game. I'd be surprised. And I'm perfectly fine to be surprised. We'll be very happy. I can see the avenue to it. I just don't think it's super, super likely. Do I think Quickley is going to cement himself immediately as like a well above average starting point guard who has a chance to like slowly get better over time, use his like off the dribble pull stuff to manipulate, work on reads as a passer, and like work on finishing at the rim, especially putting that last dribble down instead of picking up from about like, I don't know, 12, 11 feet. There's not necessarily like low hanging fruit for him. There's like medium hanging fruit for him to go and get to elevate his game. And I think that the Raptors, like I tweeted this, you look at the way that people talk about Zach LaVine in the trade market, saying that the Bulls might have to attach assets to him to move off of his contract. You look at like the ho-hum, packages that we hear about Pascal Siakam over the past couple of years about like fringe all-star guys as far as like impact. You're like, it's not that compelling what's coming back in these trades. And you look at what Masai and Bobby were able to pull off getting Quickley and Barrett, who's been quite good, but like Quickley is the centerpiece of that deal for the Raptors. Really, really impressive trade. And I think that the Raptors, like they're gonna match anything. They're gonna pay Quickley.
Yeah.
I presume he gets between $20 and $25 million a year. Let's say it ends up at 22.8, something like that. And they like the point guard spot is sewn up, and that's good. And it's sewn up in a way that it can help elevate Scotty. And those two things we've been talking about, everybody's been talking about. You have a burgeoning star at the forward spot. Who do you pair with him to like maximize him? And so Scotty and Quickley, Masai was on the phone, right? They released that video. They said, hey, love the fit with Scotty. So yeah, a future star though, the guard position is so tough. Like Darius Garland, I think is fantastic, and he can't even make all-star games, right? Like he made one, but he can't make an all-star game anymore because the guard position is so competitive. But I think that Quickley is home run to get him in-house.
Yeah. They have been working really well together, Quickley and Barnes, both in handoff and pick and roll. It started out slow. It mostly just went to like not a ton of movement, but they've been really picking it up. The numbers really impressive between picks or handoffs between the two. Going both ways. Quickley is such a good screener for his size. About the low-hanging fruit, I actually think there's low-hanging fruit for Quickley. And it is stuff that, I mean, we've talked about as like a skill evolution across the league. And it's that you mentioned his picking up his dribble. I think it's that last step footwork. A Euro step would do him wonders. But also, and this is something that Mike Prada has written about, how players have been using, Paul George especially is one of the inventors of this, has been using that sort of last step as like a rudder to steer their footwork through the drive. Quickley doesn't do any of that. His pace is really high bursting into the rim, and his arm deceleration often is not ideal. So he's left a lot sort of on the rim rolling out long. And I think if he were able to sort of just get more diverse footwork on that end of the drive, I'm seeing a huge jump for him. He has so much. The reads have been better than I thought. You mentioned the passing. He's had some nice live dribble, offhand passes, good little leave aheads, like on the short roll.
Yep.
I think he's been really good. I've really liked what Quickley has done, except for how he's getting to the rim. And I don't think that's that hard to get. Do you?
So I will say that I disagree wholeheartedly.
Amazing. Do it. Say it.
So Paul George, the rudder, the deceleration, big right step before reading the dropping defender. And like whether they swing past you going right and you're around, or as you're putting that left foot down, you make contact first. This is a move I use a lot in pickup, is that decel on the right step, take contact on the left, create the distance, and then like a little push shot over top. It's a good move. In the NBA, Luka Doncic and Paul George are the two biggest users of that move.
Mm-hmm.
A guy who uses this kind of footwork, Fred VanVleet, who is shooting 43% at the rim this year and has never been above average at the rim. For small guys those types of footwork things aren't that accessible. For small guys, the important fruit to pick is the dribble. Because if Immanuel Quickley is coming into the paint and he wants to do like the decel right step, bang around, like he can't move the big, not really. He can't step as far left. The big man is more controlled. And if he's like, the sooner you pick up your dribble, the easier it is for the help side defender to track your steps and meet you where you're going to be. If you have a live dribble, this is like Kyle Lowry around the rim. Why was he always so good? Because he didn't pick up early. He had really quick pickups at the end. And if you pick up quick at the end, your pivot, your like bump and swivel is like 5 feet away from the rim instead of like 9 feet away from the rim. Like it's just, those are the big things. And you can also like Nash around. You can create different avenues. You can dart back out if you draw a switch or something like that. So I think more so than like being a guy who does a decel euro and like relying on footwork, I think it is like maintaining the live dribble, working on a quick pickup at the end, and like being more diverse in that way. And as it stands right now, Quickley is not so bad picking up early and having, like his pivot and swivel, 9 to 15 feet away from the rim because he's a really talented shooter. But I just think like that step as a driver, it means that he can get like the pump, draw fouls. He'll be jumping from like 8 feet out and scooping and trying to like make these layups over top of guys as he's like, moving himself away from the rim. I don't think that's the avenue, and I don't think it's low hanging fruit,
Okay. There's a middle ground though, because his wingspan gap is like 6 inches between him and Kyle and him and Fred, right? He's way longer than those guys.
Sure. Well, he's taller than both as well.
Yeah. And what we've seen from his driving is, I mean, yes, he picks up early, but he doesn't change what side of the rim he's on. If he's driving on the right side of the rim, he is always finishing on the right side of the rim. And it doesn't need to be decel euro moves, but just a little bit of craft on the end of those drives, I think. I meant more an example of craft than this is the craft specifically that he needs. If he were changing what side of the rim he finishes on, keeping his dribble alive, dribbling through the gap rather than picking up through the gap, stuff like I actually don't think we're super far apart. Maybe I think it's lower hanging fruit than you do.
I think it's really, really hard to access the opposite side of the rim when your pickup point is like near the free throw line.
Yeah.
Especially at that size. Like
at that size. Yep.
Yeah. Even though he is bigger and longer than both Kyle and Fred. And, it sounds ridiculous. Like, this is a Raptors podcast where, like, Kyle and Fred are the only 2 point guards ever.
There's 3 point guards in the league. Kyle, Fred, and Immanuel Quickley.
And Malachi Flynn. Like, the reference points only exist in Toronto. But, yeah, I think in my mind, I'm like, that's really, really difficult to achieve at the NBA level. But craft can include anything, not just what we were talking about. So, craft can elevate his finishing on the inside, assuredly. But as far as that specific aspect of craft, I don't know how accessible it is. But craft in general, certainly.
And I think he needs it. Like right now, what the Raptors have in Quickley and in Barnes is really, really nice. Just unbelievable foundational duo. But I think unless Quickley gets some of that craft and becomes a more dangerous driver, I do think there's a lot left on the table as a duo. And I think that changes what you're looking like. If Quickley were a Maxey level driver, for example, because he's compared to Maxey a lot, but Maxey's phenomenal around the rim and Quickley's not. And if Quickley were that, it would actually really change in terms of like the foundation, what you're looking to trade Siakam for. It's like, these are small things and I took you into the weeds. I apologize, but I actually think it's really important for the big picture outlook as well.
Yeah. I think the Maxey comparisons, I get why they get compared. They're like the Kentucky guards. They have a similar shape to their game. But Maxey is not named Quickley, but he's quicker. He is, a more elevated playmaker at this point, but that also could be reps. Like it would, as far as shooting, it wouldn't surprise me if Quickley surpasses Maxey as a shooter over the next 5 years. They're both fantastic shooters, but it wouldn't surprise me if Quickley grades out as better. Playmaking, I think Quickley immediately you see like assist percentage skyrockets as soon as he joins the Raptors, and his assists per game immediately become similar to Maxey's. The playmaking stuff, Maxey, I love his game. I think that, they are comparable playmaking. I think they're both good playmakers, and I think Quickley could end up being a better one. That's perfectly in the realm of, possibilities. I think the finishing, the floater stuff, they're both great at it. At rim finishing, the gap is a chasm. Like Maxey is one of the greatest I've ever seen, given his size. His touch, finishing through contact, creativity, just like his footwork, everything is insane to me.
Yes.
It would blow my mind if Quickley ever reached that level, because Maxey is nuts there.
Yeah. And that's really like, until Quickley becomes that level of player inside the arc, or not that level, but a really dangerous player inside the arc. I do think that airballed pull-up three he had against Sacramento, right? It was Duarte guarding him. Yeah, against Sacramento. I do think that the Quickley Barnes two-man game will create some of those looks when defenses are insanely keyed in, because you just need you and Joe Wolfond, I saw on Twitter talking the other day about like 4-level scoring.
Yeah, that's Joe's consideration for sure.
Yeah, and I think Quickley and Barnes, between the two of them, need to have more of those 8 levels covered, I think.
Yeah, they're missing just like a little bit of it. And Scotty, I think, has a very clear avenue to 4. It's just about frequencies kind of leveling out. Like that's the thing too, is like if you look at the high watermark for rim finishing, Immanuel Quickley actually has the highest season between he and Maxey, but he is like 2 times less likely to get to the rim as Maxey. So like volume is in consideration for finishing as well, because if you only take like, this is the Steph Curry thing too. How does Steph Curry shoot like 76% at the rim some seasons? Because he's taking a lot of wide open. He's taking a lot of wide open layups off of split action as well, right? So, and also it's like transition factors into that, unless you go to synergy and account for half court stuff. But yeah, there's meat left on the bone for both Quickley and Scotty, and it's harmonious. I think like they can work on that stuff together. Neither will take away from one another. Coming into this podcast, I think like they are the top 2 in touches for the Raptors since the trade. They, as far as like usage plus assist percentage, they're the top 2 once again. These are the guys that the Raptors, Darko, Masai, whoever, want the team to be built around going forward. That pairing. And if someone else ever joins the team or develops from within the team right now to, jump over Quickley or Scotty, like cool, you can reevaluate. But as of right now, Quickley and Scotty are very much, that's the tandem that sets the tone for the Raptors into the future. That's the big thing.
Who a pretty good compliment is? A long 6'9" forward who makes his corner threes, dominates in the middle of the floor. Like Pascal Siakam has been so good alongside the two of them.
Yeah, he's played almost perfect offensive basketball. Like, I wasn't exaggerating. Over the last 2 weeks, coming into last night's game, of the high volume scorers in the NBA, Pascal was 3rd in efficiency coming into that game.
Yeah.
After last night's game, he surpasses Kevin Durant, and he's only behind Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who very well could win MVP this season. So that's kind of, he's been unbelievable offensively. There is one big motivator for why the Raptors have been like one of the best offenses in the NBA, not just since the trade, but for a month and a half now. Like in the half court and overall, the Raptors have been tremendous. And it's Scotty had an awesome month of December. That helps. Mm-hmm. And Pascal has been like faultless offensively, has just been perfect. Everything he does was super efficient. He makes shots from everywhere on the court. He's like making great decisions as a passer. He is a hub who just provides like instant, efficient offense. He is, however, quiet quitting on defense the same way that OG was. And them's the breaks.
Yeah, which is actually a fair transition because I was going to ask, I mean, we both know the answer to this question. If they've been so good on one end, why are they 3-4 since the trade?
Partially because they didn't have Pascal in one game, and partially because they didn't have Yak is an important like factor. It's a 3-game skid without Yak. Not that Yak is the end all be all, just that like the Raptors are losing on the margins, except against the Jazz. They got shellacked. But so Pascal's defense hasn't been good on the interior. On the perimeter, I think he's been pretty good. He still moves his feet. He still like is very switchable for his size, competes with like smaller players better than most. He's not Keegan Murray.
His foul rate has dropped a lot this year too, which is really big.
That's because he doesn't contest anything at the rim, though.
No, but he like on the perimeter. He's fouling less on the perimeter, which is really good.
Because you don't want him because he's been in foul trouble like fairly often in recent years, and part of that is being like overextended. But the big thing and the reason why he's not as effective is because defensively he's not jumping with guys. Like that is as simple as you can say it. And what is the obvious reason why this is happening? It's a contract year. He like that's what it is. And you know what? Any other like I like Pascal. I didn't blame OG when he was doing it. I'm not going to blame Pascal when he's doing it. These guys are trying to make life-changing money. Pascal has injured himself repeatedly for these Raptors. He was the minutes per game leader 2 years in a row. He led the NBA all in the same season in minutes per game, closeouts, and isolations. Like he's been worked like crazy, shows up, plays like through maladies, plays through a bunch of stuff, and he's really just like not competing at the same level defensively, probably until he gets paid. That's
so I want to hone in on that one word, probably. Do you think the bridge can be mended? Like, do you think right now the rift between the Raptors and Siakam is in any way fixable?
No, not really. Not really. I think they have been careless from there. Like Pascal, would it be nice if he was like going crazy? Like he gave it all, his all defensively all the time, and was like, we'll figure out the contract when we figure it out, all that kind of stuff. Like, would it be nice if that were the case? Yes, because it's better basketball and it gives the Raptors a better chance game in and game out. The relationship between the two, though, was in the hands of the Raptors. Yeah. And they have been especially careless speaking about him publicly. I think you could see it immediately when the season started that there was no plan for him in the offense. Once he starts getting more involved is immediately once the offense started getting better. Like the Pascal's usage climbing and the offense becoming better. They're like 1-1.
1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah. And early on, they had no plans for him. They hardly talked about him. Like, I understand there's stuff happening as far as like, expectation of contract, negotiations, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of that is behind closed doors. And then you look at reporting, you look at public commentary, and you say, this is like unbecoming of the Raptors. And especially the report about them not talking to him over the summer, just like not talking to him. I don't think they bridged the gap. No.
It was a clean slate too. Like, obviously, I mean, it's not news that Siakam and Nick Nurse didn't get along from time to time, right? And they didn't choose Nick Nurse over Siakam. They got a new coach, a player coach who stars love, right? They had a fresh slate, a chance to...
Who I like a lot. And I think has done a tremendous job with his players since coming in.
And whose offense is looking pretty clean. Jamo Malalela, maybe his offense. Anyway, but I think they had a chance to build that bridge and they just saw no need, or very weird stuff. Because everything you said, I agree with. Like, it was, and I think I see people saying the same thing. Like, careless is diplomatic, right? I agree completely with that, with what Joe's saying. And they could have, like, there was no reason to do it this way, but we're here now. And yeah, I think I'd be inclined to agree with you that it's probably unmendable. So that sucks, because I think a locked-in Siakam on a team that could win, like if the Raptors had the pieces to be competitive and Siakam was paid before the year started, I really think his defense would be very different. And the team would be very different, but we're not there. And I think we can't be there. So that is what it is.
There's an interesting comment from Andre Silva that I think represents like a sect of the fan base's opinion on Siakam. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity. So it says, quote, "Are we going to act like Masai didn't give Pascal 3 years to lead this team? Pascal did this to himself," end quote. So I think this is like interesting from the point of view of like, what responsibility do you think the player has, right? Fred VanVleet was also leading this team. He was seen as extremely valuable by other teams. The Rockets paid Fred VanVleet a whole bunch of money. A lot of the same advanced analytics that really like, and catch-all stats that really like Scotty this year still love Fred VanVleet. He's been, essential to what the Rockets have done. And, there are a lot of good players in the NBA who get paid a lot of money. I think Pascal isn't even in the top 20 this season. And not everybody on a max contract is told, like, you lead a team, like you make this team win. And so what are the expectations of a guy who gets a max contract? Is it that like you not only play well, you not only get selected to all NBA teams, you not only get selected to all-star teams, but no matter what else is happening on the roster, no matter what else is happening with the team, you have to drag the team out of whatever. Luka Doncic has not made the playoffs. Like that has happened while he's a first-team All-NBA player.
No. Oh, you mean sorry. I thought you meant ever. I was like, that's not.
No. But that's what I mean, right? Like, what are the expectations of a player? I just think like to say, well, Pascal didn't lead this team to anything, so he shouldn't have access to talk to the front office. He shouldn't be, he should have things sloppily said about him in the public for public consumption. He also shouldn't have an opportunity to discuss like an extension, all this kind of stuff. I don't understand that point of view, basically. Like what are the expectations of somebody with a max contract is like lead this team, make them good. But then you look and say how many guys are on max extensions and max contracts, and it's what, like 32? Is every guy doing that? No. Yeah. I mean, LeBron James and Anthony Davis missed the playoffs. Like I don't understand viewing a player through the team context exclusively and just like being like, well, if you were good, you'd make the team good. I don't know if I understand that point of view.
I mean, everything in the NBA is a zero-sum environment just by virtue of it being a competition, right? Every game you win is a game another team loses. And so max contract has to be seen through the lens of comparison to other max contract guys, I guess. You can follow down that path.
It doesn't though. Because it's
I'm not saying I agree with that,
but that's like, just to quickly say this, the whole crux of the NBA is that LeBron James makes $44 million a year instead of 180, so that Jalen Hood-Schifino can make a bunch of money on his rookie contract. Like that is the structure of the NBA. Nikola Jokic and like these guys they make less than what they are worth. They make less than what their impact is, and that creates like better contracts and more. Like it creates better contracts for the rest of the league. It's socialist in that way. The collective.
Very socialist league.
Yes.
No relegation, right? Very socialist league.
That's right.
Yeah. RJ Barrett. So sorry, I know that you're the host.
No. Well, I just wanted to get because I see this point of view as like, if he wanted something to happen, he should have like led this team to some place or whatever. But I don't understand that point of view necessarily. Like Pascal,
we're aligned here.
Pascal, you can like say like, if someone says they don't think he's worth a max contract or a max extension, fine. If they think he isn't worth whatever else, fine. But that doesn't mean he shouldn't be talked to. That doesn't mean that like there should be messaging about him that's negative constantly. That just he shows up, he plays, he's pretty damn good. He's been underperforming defensively, but like I don't understand the zero sum aspect because I don't actually think that it's a zero sum game, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, no, I was just that was devil's advocate. We're in agreement here, in that guys earn their money basically, and one player can't win in the NBA. That's just not possible. Okay, we talked quickly. RJ Barrett has been perfect. Like, wow. Just so my question really is, how much of this is context? Like, obviously, the guy has improved his game a ton. We've seen passes he didn't make before. His touch has been great. His shooting has been on a heater. Like, all that factored in. How much of this is the Raptors needed a guy who does exactly what RJ Barrett does?
I don't think they needed exactly RJ. I don't think RJ needed exactly the Raptors, but I think that there's elements of both that are extremely helpful. Like I wrote about this in the piece I wrote about him where I talked about like how it's RJ is a counter to everything that the Raptors do, whether it's like Pascal, Scotty, Dennis, Quickley. He represents a counter current coming the complete opposite way. Teams gear up all game to play against guys driving to the right, who their counter is to go left. And RJ Barrett is just like, I'm getting to the left side of the glass. And I'm going to do it against misshapen defenses because of the other talent on the roster. And because, as we talked about a little bit earlier, Darko and Jama have been in their bag as far as like the structure of the offense, continuous motion, all that kind of stuff. And I think that RJ, most of what he's done improvement-wise has been context and improved decision-making. We've seen like his best plays as a Raptor. We've seen them emulated elsewhere. Like we've seen it with Team Canada for spurts. We've seen it on New York for spurts. We've seen all this kind of stuff. It's the consistency of the good decisions. It's the willingness to not like overstep as an offensive creator. It's the willingness to reset the ball. It's the willingness to abandon drives that seem like maybe they're a bit ill-informed. All that kind of stuff means he's putting his own skills in a position to win repeatedly. And that, I think, if the decision-making holds, his finishing at the rim, while maybe he was overachieving a tad, I think that he can, for the first time in his career, be an above-average finisher at the rim, which is huge for a guy who punishes and drives.
And gets
like that's the whole crux of his game.
And you watch him, and there's no finish where it's like, oh, wow, that's crazy. Every finish he's had is like he gets to the rim, he takes contact on the floor, and then it's either that little lefty push shot, which is really clean footwork, or he's just putting it on the glass from right there. It's like the finishing has, statistically overperforming, but just eye test. It's like, this is very sustainable stuff he's doing. Okay, my favorite move, I think, was last night. I saw you tweet about this. I was freaking out. It was the Grady Dick pass. Stampede cut, way overplayed on the right. Step through straight to the left to the push out. Oh my God, man. Because it was not just unbelievable footwork, in contact in the middle of the floor. It was also a microcosm for quick decision making, right? Driving. Toronto needs guys who are just going to take it as deep as they can get until they're stopped. And then the analogy for the team as a whole and what he represents is the step through, where it's like, I'm overplayed so far one way, so I'm just going to take the space that's given. Man, so cool. So cool. What's your favorite play?
My favorite play is one of the first ones we saw, pseudo transition, because we see a play he's able to make in the opener against the Cavs, right? A play that he's able to make that no other guard on the roster can make. And also, like, another wrinkle is that, like, the Raptors are a really big team right now with Jakob there, especially playing next to, Pascal and Scotty. RJ all of a sudden he gets pinch post actions on like Malik Monk and Steph Curry, and it's bully time. It's really bully time. He gets some of those opportunities, but one of my favorite plays is just like he walked the guy into the stanchion, drove straight at him, just like gathered through him. He goes into the stanchion, finger roll right at the top. There's also a stampede cut, one pass away. They're showing to Immanuel Quickley a little bit, makes the pass, not a skip or anything. RJ stampede cut to the rim. They have to rotate over, bump him, takes the bump, finishes at the rim. It's just like he is strong, man. He's like a classic case of strength creation on the inside. There's a lot of that on the Knicks, especially coming from the left side. Jalen does it. Julius does it. RJ used to do it. And so that's kind of the situation with RJ. There's a lot of stuff that's immediately easier for him to do, especially if his decision-making supports what he wants. And, the term is like the better angels of our nature. He's appealing to a lot. He's appealing to the better angels of his decision-making, of his game, like quite consistently. So, yeah.
Barnes and Pirtle are very different players than those with whom he played in New York.
Yeah.
They were very different players. Man, it's been such a pleasure. Just what a joy to watch a guy who, I thought he would be good. I didn't think he would be great. I saw, like, we've been talking about the toxic asset thing the whole time, just universally not condemned. That might be too far, but like laughed about as, this third overall pick, seen as a bust, even though he's putting up 18 a game his whole career, basically. And to come into a new team without expectations and to be this in Toronto, no less, right? What an unbelievable story. It's just so cool to see RJ Barrett do this. And the other thing that I really love is I do think his success with Team Canada has mattered because he had guys get nervous in a new situation, with new pressures. He has had the pressures, right? Like he has had the pressures in Canada the whole time. And I like the spotlight is nothing for him in New York, right? He's coming from the Mecca. That matters. It's just been so cool. And a story missing such cool stories. He is the coolest one so far.
I think Quickley has been everything everybody would have wanted for the most part. Yeah. Underperformed a little bit in some ways, but he's also shooting like 50% from three. He's just been like super, super impressive. And even still, he's been overshadowed a little bit because RJ Barrett has decided like he's going to have an unsustainable shooting streak from three. Yes. But also that RJ Barrett is going to punish the rim repeatedly and impressively so in a way that looks like it's sustainable and makes sense. And he's going to do it in the most like no frills way possible. Like when I talked about, or I made that graphic about the Raptors touches since the trade, RJ and Pascal both touching the ball less than Jakob Poeltl.
Yeah.
And they were the leading scorers since the trade, 24 and 21 points per game, because they're just like, when I get the ball, I'm going to be decisive. If it's there, I'm going to take it. If it's not there, okay, move the ball on. And there's a little bit more probing from Siakam, obviously. But as far as like those two guys, they've just taken less than what other guys are getting on the roster. And they've just done like an insane amount of work with it. And Pascal, I don't know how long he's with the Raptors, but RJ is with the Raptors for the foreseeable future. And to see him immediately make like proactive decisions, to see him immediately input his game tremendously and see him do like all that kind of stuff is really rewarding, especially since everybody loves a comeback story. And you're looking at a guy that, all of the conversation around him that I saw, that I see in like comment sections, that I saw on Twitter, that like even from Zach Lowe, who spoke to Executive Y, from David Thorpe, who spoke to Executive X, whatever, is just like negative. Everyone's saying like he plays, just saying like he plays stupid basketball. He can't do this. He can't do that. And then he immediately comes in and starts playing like really great basketball and can do a lot of things. And there you go. Bob's your uncle.
Awesome.
Yeah.
When's the last awesome story the Raptors have had? Like this has
been
a team.
Scotty's awesome story. Like
Scotty's an awesome story.
Yeah.
Van Fleet was an awesome story for a bit, early on when he was the rags to riches undrafted guy. But sports is about stories more than anything. There's 30 teams, one wins a championship, 29 need stuff to talk about, need stories to
29 are
sell.
losers who can't do stuff.
Yeah, of course. But there's a reason 29 stadiums still get, almost 20,000 people there. There's stuff going on that's interesting for everyone and enjoyable for tens of thousands of people in each of these cities. And I love writing about pinch post actions and post ups, but even more than that, I love writing about what RJ Barrett is doing right now. It's more appealing to our humanity than scoring or shooting. It's so cool, man. And he must be so happy. It's awesome.
Yeah. And I do have an Uncle Bob, just to clarify. I'm not speaking out of turn here. The RJ stuff has been tremendous. It's cool also because the way I view basketball, I'm not like hoping for bad things in New York or for OG.
Yeah.
It's been cool to see that the Knicks are equally as happy with their fit and how things are going over there. And the fact that, like, even in games they lose, you look at it at the end, OG is like a plus 14.
Yeah.
And they've lost one game, to be fair, but he's a plus 14 in their loss. He just wins minutes. He just immediately steps onto that wing in the Mecca, makes perfect sense. And it's been cool to see OG make perfect sense and Quickley make perfect sense and RJ make perfect sense. We'll see what happens with Precious and Malachi, but I like win-win trades.
The way NBA teams are built, a lot of teams have shooting and guards and pace. The Raptors didn't. Not a lot of teams have size and defense and power forwards. The Raptors do. Makes sense that the Raptors had a win-win trade with another team. Pretty cool, though.
Yeah, we have an interesting listener question from Alex. Says, Samson, I want to ask something. There was a guy on Twitter who was comparing DeMar to RJ 4 years in. What do you think? I don't like player comps too often, much at all, really, because especially a guy like DeMar is an example of a guy who is incomparable because the same way that Pascal is kind of incomparable, that they have irregular progression, like very, very irregular progression. So you could look at anybody sitting where you could look at a bunch of shooting guards, for example, that were kind of like maybe a little bit inconsistent, definitely defensively, that are underperforming efficiency wise, but have volume in the first 3 or 4 years of their career, like RJ did and like DeMar did. Then you could say, like, well, DeMar did it on the Raptors, RJ could do it. And that could end up being true. But there's also like a mountain of guards who had a lot of volume early on in their career and were not really efficient, who ended up becoming like bench players over the course of their career or like flamed out. And there's a lot more of those guys than there is DeMar DeRozan. RJ, I think, has the potential to score a lot on the inside of the arc. I think he has the potential to sort out his catch and shoot stuff over time. I think he has the potential to exist in a good defense. All of those things are way more important than like invoking DeMar DeRozan's name. RJ has skills that we've talked about so far in this podcast that I think tangibly allow him to do things on the court in a way that even DeMar didn't really do, right? And so, but there are a couple markers that are similar, like getting to the rim, finishing at the rim, high free throw rate. There's an ability to muscle and strength create over smaller players on like mismatches, depending on the roster you're playing against. Like those types of things are similar, but it's hard to say, like, the part of the Raptors' developmental downfall over the past however many years was like, well, we can make guys like Pascal. We can develop guys. And it's like, no, like you can develop guys, yes, but the biggest win in drafting Pascal was that you drafted a guy who had latent abilities and had the potential when you drafted him to turn himself into something. And then Pascal, more than the Raptors, worked on his game to realize that potential. Fred, more than the Raptors, worked on his game to realize that potential. Development is way too often credited to teams instead of players. So RJ can definitely turn himself into, like, if he makes an all-star game in his career, I'm surprised a little bit, but he can do enough things on the court that it could end up that way. He can, like, he's making skip passes, he's making laydowns, he's getting to the left side of the basket, he's hitting his threes, he's making push shots. Like, there's enough stuff there. If he hits on all of them, good. He might be there. But I don't think DeMar creates like a precedent to believe in or anything like that. I think it's just RJ and his skill sets.
The deeper you look at good players in the NBA, the more unique they all are. Like, everybody's their own Ty Crane in a sense. And
you have made a Ty Crane reference on like the last 4 podcasts we've done together.
Okay, here's another repeat
How
reference.
often do you watch that movie?
Every day. I
How
wake up.
How good is the one montage? The "Here we come to get you."
Oh, it's good.
And
It's
you
good.
get the like the big dunk, and it's like, man.
The hoop is good in that movie.
That's why I love the movie, because they actually got guys who could play basketball. They actually, when they play basketball, you're like, damn, these guys are hooping.
Yeah,
it's great.
But okay, here's another repeat comparison. Then I think it's a Jewish saying. I'm sure other cultures have also say this is their saying, but it's like every happy family is happy in a unique way, and every unhappy family is unhappy in the same way, or something like that. I'm sure I'm butchering it. It might be the other way around, but it goes to NBA. Every good NBA player is good in a unique way, right? And I think the deeper you look at guys like DeRozan or Scotty Barnes with his jump shot,
sure,
it's not reproducible in any way for how they've become who they are. DeRozan's ability to become this isolation post-up guy at the free throw line cannot be assumed. Like, you need a whole lot of multiverses for DeMar DeRozan to become DeMar DeRozan in this universe.
Yeah. And
for RJ Barrett to also become that in this universe seems impossible. So let guys be themselves, I think, is the don't listen to my Jewish sayings, but let guys be themselves.
That was in Scotty's first season, January, when I looked at every single possession of his and wrote that big piece and said he's going to be a superstar, and a really unique one at that. David Thorpe read the piece and commented on it, and he said he would think he would just be like kind of a star wing, like it's just going to be like that. He didn't think he would be that unique. And I was like, what? I was like, Scotty, like I don't see a lot of other players who play like he does, even in his rookie season. And of course he's changed and adapted since then, but like the things that motivate success for Scotty are exceptionally unique.
Yeah.
And just like, so many players are unique that there's so many ways, like infinite ways to succeed on an NBA court. Even like something as simple as like Pascal Siakam and Immanuel Quickley both are great from like 12 to 8 feet. They do it in completely different ways,
Yeah.
Scotty Barnes, like being a muscly little bullfrog, and also like Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam can both get downhill and score on the move.
So different.
And they are worlds apart in how they do it. And it's just like, I don't know, the more you watch a player, it's like the opposite of feelings, the more personal, the more universal. Basketball is like not like that at all. Everybody has such unique body compositions. Everyone has like skills they stack on top of that. And you don't realize like how much your build creates, the environment for what you do to succeed in spite of it. Like all this kind of stuff. So comps are tough is all I'll say. And RJ and DeMar, I think RJ could be really good. And DeMar is really good for like way longer than people thought. And he got really good quicker than people thought. And just like, yeah, players are unique, man. Like nobody, that's why it's so hard to pick stars, because a guy comes and succeeds in a new way. Jalen Brunson, I can't believe the Mavericks like pushed him out and made him feel like he had to go elsewhere and everything like that right after he had like this fantastic playoff run with them. Then he immediately goes to New York, starts like pivoting, pushing, push shot making, like all this type of stuff, starts hitting threes, but it's like no other guard plays like Jalen Brunson. But he's a star guard. No other big had played like Jokic for years and years, and even then, it's just like flashes of it, and he's been the best player in the NBA. Joel Embiid is completely singular. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is an octopus who plays basketball. Like, the things he's able to do, these guys, you don't see it until you see it.
Yeah.
And Scottie is a player, like, you don't see it till you see it. Even like the Magic Johnson comps is just in transition in the half court. They're way different.
Yeah.
Like, it's
yeah.
like, you don't see it till you see it with players. And you have to be very imaginative as a scout to try and project some of that stuff. And even sometimes coaches have a tough time seeing it until they get like an overwhelming result repeatedly. And they say, okay, I guess we're trying this out.
And that's why I love basketball so much.
Yep.
Like, you can play baseball in spreadsheets. You can build a baseball team just looking at the numbers.
Discrete statistics.
And basketball, if you look at the numbers, you're missing worlds in the percentages of frequency and accuracy. And you mentioned Barnes and Siakam. One thing that I think is so cool, they both love that 6-foot shot, right? And they get to it. Like, Siakam might be the quickest player in the league at getting from 6 feet to the rim. And Barnes might be the slowest player in the league at getting from 6 feet to the rim. Like, Barnes stops there. He turns his back. He swivels his hips. He does the golf shot where, like, your arms are supposed to follow your hips. He does that with his push shot.
Yeah.
And Siakam is like, boom, he spun. He's at the rim. His guy's like, what just happened? It's so, like, that's why we watch the game, right? Is to see the unique,
Scottie is the biggest driver. Like, he is like a combine, like farming, like mowing down space, getting down there. And Pascal is like a scythe. Pascal gets like, his shoulders shrink. His legs get close. And he's like trying to like pierce through places and get to the glass. Whereas Scottie is like hopping around, boom, crash, boom. And he's so damn big and so comfortable with contact that it doesn't matter. Which is also why I think Scottie has like a higher potential in the future to comfortably get to that spot on the floor as like a late game shot maker, which is a really cool wrinkle. And Pascal is a guy who consistently in like third quarters, for example, when he finds out the spacing and how defenses are trying to manage him, he finds holes that a lot of other guys don't find. You know, Caitlin Cooper last year said Pascal gets to places like a piece of paper going under a crack in a door. They're just completely separate ways that they succeed. It's cool.
Pascal plays like a train without a cow catcher, and Barnes plays like a train with
the cow catcher. Wow. We're so back.
You want to talk about something bad about this team, though? Can this team play good defense?
Sometimes.
But is this, I mean, the offense is really good, but every team's offense is good, mostly in this new era, right? Like, you're not going to be a good team, a playoff team. Well, let me ask you, are they going to be a good team, a playoff team with the defense that they're currently able to play?
No.
Okay, let's talk about that then.
Okay, so one thing has to happen if the team stays as constructed. Everybody on the team has to be better defensively. Guys have to be...
One thing has to happen.
Guys have to be more proactive in their roles. I do think that Pascal is the guy dogging it the most. Pascal is the guy who can immediately turn, what's been a negative into a positive. I think that's true. While also saying, like, I don't care about guys trying to get paid. I'm not here to count, check pockets or tell guys to lose money and get injured. I don't care about that. Yeah. The Raptors aren't good enough to care about that kind of stuff. They really aren't. Nobody cares in New York that OG was doing this. Once OG was gone, nobody cared that he didn't play defense at the end of his Raptors tenure. Yeah. Nobody cares. If you're a championship team and you're not playing defense, then you care.
Yeah,
but that kind of Pascal's the guy who can step up the most. That being said, like, moving Scottie away from the lower half of the defense, seeing that he's averaging like 4 rebounds a game since the trade, like all this kind of stuff. RJ struggling a little bit off ball, Immanuel and Dennis together not being very good at the point of attack, but both of them being pretty heady as off ball defenders, especially at the nail. Immanuel better, farther away from the ball than Dennis is. There's just like Jonte battling, and I'm proud of the battles he gets out there and does, but like it's not moving the needle. They just don't have a point of strength defensively.
Yeah.
That to me is the biggest problem. They can't get stops at the point of attack. They haven't been like really strong in court coverage as a broken defense, maintaining their shell, communicating, covering ground. No, they haven't been good at protecting the rim since Yak is gone. Where is the strength? It isn't there. So where do you rank? 28th in the NBA. And it's okay if the Pacers, like Caitlin Cooper has this awesome tweet about the Pacers, they just have to be bad defensively to be really good overall. And they've been horrific. Like, and the Raptors have been horrific defensively, and they aren't the best offense in the league like the Pacers are. So it's just the defense has been bad. No good.
Yeah. Yeah, if they're a shell, they're a conch, right? That's a shell with a big hole.
Every shell has a hole in it.
Yeah, every shell has a hole. How else would the little crab? Anyway,
hermit crab, yeah.
Yeah.
Who is the Raptors hermit crab? Is it Jakob Poeltl? Is it the collective raptor crawling into the shell?
I once did a science project with my friend about the trainability of hermit crabs. And we were looking at whether light or food was better at teaching them to do a maze. But really what we found was don't drop one of the hermit crabs before the experiment. And then because that'll throw off all your data.
Has this Raptors crab been dropped?
I mean, kind of, right? They're not pushing defenses deep into actions. And I think there's a lot of guys who, if the team was good, would be playing better defense. Like Dennis Schroeder, for all of his reputation as a good defender, has been inconsistent as a defender for a long time, including this year, right? There's stretches where he plays phenomenal defense. Then there's stretches where he gets beat backdoor. There's just a lot of guys who are like chicken and the egg, where they're going to play good defense if they're good, but they're not good. It's what would happen first. And it's just nothing is working on the defensive end. And part of that is personnel, right? But it's also just like, if they had everyone healthy, what are they even trying to do? Like, what's their defensive identity?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's when I asked Darko at his introductory press conference about the defense, he said
he'd sit down with you. Has that happened?
No, it hasn't happened. I think the X's and O's of that side of the floor have been shape-shifting. So even if we sat down, I'm not sure he'd be able to cogently explain what the hell is happening. But he did say, like, don't worry, we're going to have a really, really good defense. And that started the start of the season. That was the case. I came into this season looking at the roster at hand and said, I don't think they'll be less than 12th. And, there for a long time, they weren't. For about 20 games, they weren't. They were top 12, and they were as high as top 4, that kind of stuff. They were good. Hope springs eternal, start of the season. You're playing within the shell. You're playing to the scheme. You have strengths, obviously. There's a lot of defensive talent on the roster. Scotty is, a burgeoning defensive star in a new role. Pascal is keeping up with a lot of quicker guys on the perimeter. OG is a perfect guy just covering for everything. Jakob starts out strong. Guys are plugging in. Dennis is pretty good at the point of attack. All that stuff started happening. Everything is falling off.
Yeah.
Everything is falling off. They don't contain at the point of attack. They don't deter stuff at the rim. Their court coverage isn't strong. They are undone by specific matchups against most teams. Teams, if they have to search for something, oftentimes don't have to search that hard for what to attack. But if they do, they find it. That's the Raptors defense lately.
The Utah game, I was trying to count. It's how many possessions has Toronto forced Utah away from the main action? And it was 1. and that was the one where Clarkson hit a step back three, like late clock. It just it was like, okay, we're gonna run a flare screen to get to this. Oh nope, they just hit a three uncontested out of the flare screen. They didn't need. It's like everything was just option A. It's like, oh, we have an open shot, cool. We didn't need to run all the other stuff. How many
The Raptors
lobs?
backcourt got slammed,
Yeah,
slammed last game,
and I don't see this group of players being a good defense as currently constructed.
No, like Jakob coming back and like that stuff could be, interesting for like maybe you're like, wow, they had a really good stretch and they end up like 14th or something like that. But that's just not good enough.
Yeah. Fortunately, this isn't the team that they're going to have anyway, so it doesn't super matter. Quickley can play good defense, right? Quickley and Barnes are both really good defenders. That matters. I think RJ Barrett also, he's had some mistakes I didn't expect of him in recent games on the defensive end. He's way miscast as like a isolation stopper, but I've been really impressed, at least when I watched the film for the piece I wrote when they acquired him. I was really impressed with his team. Like, he tags well, he closes out well. He's pretty good at the nail. He does good stuff in a team context that just shows up nowhere on the stats, like nowhere. He's not getting a steal. He's not getting a rebound. He's not even contesting a shot. But it's just like pretty solid team defense, moving the chains down, like, is for a defense. But it's just like, unless you have someone at the point of attack who's stopping the dribble, unless you have someone who's doing something, it's just not that important. And he's also getting back cut, which really sucks. Yeah. Like, I think there's players who can make it work, but man, it's just not working as it stands.
It's Mixall Qual says, Quickley to me has felt like he has really good closeouts and movement things, but just gives up a lot of size in a lot of matchups and gets bullied from that. Awesome observation. His closeouts to me are like incredible. Yeah. It's really hard to manage. You suppress the jumper. You don't want them to get it up. And you also don't give up like a huge lane for driving. Like you're going to like stop the jumper and meet them on their hip, if not get in front of their body. And like he can do that. He can manage that. So great observation, Mixall. And RJ, I think people who, because he's so strong, kind of like how Tobias Harris, like people can get gassed on Tobias Harris's defense for a little bit when he guards a guy who isn't out quicking him. He guards a guy who's trying to move through him. James Harden had like the blog boy, like, oh, his defense has gotten better because he found himself in a lot of matchups where it's like just strength. Yeah. And RJ is a guy who could have, if the Raptors are mindful of his strengths defensively, which would be like, put him on a bigger guy, like put RJ on a guy who's bigger than him and let him move his feet with a guy who's maybe a bit slower but stronger, because RJ is an ox a little bit. And, big guys, provided it's not a big guy who makes a lot of back cuts, there's room for RJ to find success defensively. And the ISO stuff, I think people don't notice that often when a guy is like playing a quick guy in isolation, but they notice when like LeBron has a tough time moving you and everyone's like, whoa, he just like, he closed down LeBron. And so that's maybe where some of the like RJ ISO stuff thing was coming from. But I like a lot of the decisions. He's also like Jakob Poeltl since the trade leads the Raptors in rebounds at 9. Then it's RJ at 6.9. Then it's Chris Boucher at 5. Then it's Pascal at 5. Then it's Quickley at 4.4. Then it's Scotty at 3.9. Weird. RJ at least, and that's a cool thing too, coming in for Gary Trent Jr. is there's just like rim pressure there. He has shot the ball well, and like he cleans up the glass, and he has more size everywhere. And like there's more punch there. So RJ overall pretty happy. He can exist in a good defense. So can Quickley. So can Barnes. And that's the BBQ. It is the barbecue era going forward. Whatever happens with Pascal happens with Pascal. And I think you can comfortably say those three guys play defense. So
last time I made a Frisbee comp on this pod, you loved it. So I'm going to do it again. It's risky business out here making Frisbee comps. But when you're guarding the disc, everyone's such a good thrower, at least when you play high level. Like, you can't stop someone from getting a throw off. Like, you and another guy could both guard me. I can get the disc wherever I want, right? You might have to throw over the top, but like, it doesn't matter if there's guys on the disc. So what you do then as a good on disc defender is you have to stop them from throwing one side, right? You can't take away the whole field. You can't take away throw. You can make sure they don't throw left to right. Maybe you force them to throw right to left. If you're really good, you can force them to throw over the top. That's a huge win, right? Because that gives guys time to get there in the air because it's slower. And Barrett and Quickley, I think, can do that for closeouts, right? They can force guys to go one direction. They're not stopping guys from getting it up, right? There, OG Anunoby could move the ball along. He'd be like, next guy up. They can't do that, but they can funnel, right? They can funnel. The team just doesn't have the basin at the bottom of the funnel to catch the juice. Okay, so I'm still listening. I'm just gonna leave the room for a very quick moment. But what I want to ask, not guys, but skill sets. Then, what do the Raptors need to make this work
defensively?
Yeah.
Okay. Mute yourself. What do the Raptors need to make this work? If we look at historically the best funnels, we can look at like the Milwaukee Bucks are a really strong one. They're the most popular funnels in like recent history defensively. Brook Lopez, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Bobby Portis in spurts, super big deal. The Knicks are a team that they've succeeded defensively for a long time now too. Under Tom Thibodeau, they have had Mitchell Robinson, who I think is really affecting as a low man. They've had Hartenstein, who I think is really affecting as a low man. They have size to pinch in from the wings with Josh Hart and Julius Randle and RJ Barrett in the past. They have conviction to move to the floor. And I've talked about this before, but if you don't have the size, which the Raptors do sometimes and don't other times, with injuries, if you don't have the size, you need to be really proactive in a way that the Thunder were last year and the Raptors have been in the past, that like you have to meet guys. You have to have you really have to give a shit defensively. You have to step up to the nail, make guys pick up their dribble one dribble earlier, make them pick up their dribble one step earlier, make them make reads as an on-ball playmaker earlier and in less dangerous spots. And that requires communication, that requires team defense, and it doesn't always require size, but that size at the back end of the rim to erase shots means that you don't have to move as much, don't have to be as quick, and you can play more conservative styles of defense. That is what the Raptors had to start the season. A lot of those things. They lost their conviction, they lost their best wing defender, and they just got their big man injured. So the defense is obviously fallen apart.
So then follow-up question, can Poeltl not be that? Like, he may not be Brook Lopez, but can he not be Isaiah Hartenstein?
I think, Hartenstein and Poeltl, that's what people call him, Stein. Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
He's German. So they say Stein. He will, on top of that one, Hartenstein. But anyway, Poeltl can be that.
No. Not
to the effect that I think Hartenstein is, or Mitchell Robinson is, or Brook Lopez is. And that's fine. We're talking about especially Brook, defensive player of the year, 6 years in a row, at least in the running. Rudy Gobert is another really good example. Poeltl can be one of the 10 best defensive centers in the NBA. If he's on his game, it's just the gap between he and the guys who are defensive player of the year candidates is really still massive. He's in that second tier of defensive big. And Nicholas Claxton is in the second tier of defensive big because he has the movement. He's a backline sweeper. He can do all that kind of stuff, but he can get bodied in some matchups that Jakob wouldn't get bodied in. It's just, whereas Rudy and Brook just never give anything in any of their matchups. They're just so strong in what they succeed at that they don't ever give up ground. And unless it's Scotty Barnes scoring 20 points in the fourth quarter against Brook Lopez. Still, that game was crazy. Jakob can be super positive defensively. I think the Raptors as a unit have been not great at the funneling. A funnel has a closed, like a small hole at the end.
I know funnels.
It isn't like a cylindrical tube where it's like, oh, these guys could come out anywhere. You know, it's not like those stupid little mini golf things where they tell you, oh, if you put it in this hole, it'll come out and it'll go in the hole. It's like, no, there's room for error there. It could miss the hole by however long, all that kind of stuff. And the Raptors have been less like if Jakob is a ketchup bottle, right? You need the funnel to put, you're transferring ketchup from the big thing into the small thing. He could be a ketchup bottle if the funnel is good enough. Nice, tight funnel. However, the Raptors haven't been a nice, tight funnel. They've been one of those tricky, nebulous mini golf funnels that you don't know if it's going to put the ball in the right place or not. So Jakob, who isn't as affecting as some of the defensive player of the year guys, in that room for error, he's not as capable of taking the ball or the ketchup.
They need a guy who can't be screened. Those guys are rare. Just guys who dance around screen, like Jaden McDaniels, Alex Caruso. Like, they just dance around everything. They can blow up whole stuffs. The Raptors do not deal well with people being in their way. They must, like, have you been trying to go to the bathroom during a quarter break at the game when we're at the stadium? Not halftime. Halftime, you got time. Quarter break. And you got to dance around people, right? There's people way up. There's people in your way every which way, right?
I like to spin.
You spin move. Okay. So we all have moves. I push. Elbows up, baby. But the Raptors they couldn't do it. There's people in their way. They wouldn't get there. They'd be coming back late.
They'd miss the
first play. They might not even make the whole quarter. But like, they need guys who can dance around a crowd on the defensive end. Yeah, it's hard to watch. It's been really frustrating because for all your excitement on one end, you watch these unbelievable plays that the Raptors have never had because the last time they were a good offense, the offense around the league didn't look like this. Like, the offense, league-wide offense being what it is recent, right? And the last time the Raptors were good at offense, none of this stuff existed. So you watch, Immanuel Quickley set a back screen, and he's about to sprint into a handoff, sees it overplayed, redirects out the other side, and pivots into that pick and roll with Yak, hits the pull up. It's like, I don't know if we've ever seen stuff like that on the Raptors, at least not, consistently. And then, well, that's not the point though. Stop trying to, but then all that excitement, you just lose it. Cause on the other end, it's like, well, it's just, they're scoring with ease, man, with ease. And it's really hard. I wanted this podcast to be so positive, but it's hard because they're not going to be good until they figure this stuff out. No matter how much fun they are, and they are fun now, no matter how much fun they are, they're still a ways away from being good.
I will say, while we have like 110 people in here on a Saturday afternoon, a little ad read from myself.
Appreciate you.
And yes, appreciate it. Like the video, by the way, while you're here. It helps recommend it to other people afterwards, and it's free and it's right there. Helps us at no cost to you. Thank you very much. Something that is a small cost to you, and we would appreciate, February 6th at Rivoli, downtown Toronto. Myself and Lewis are hosting a Raptors Republic live podcast. Last year, we sold it out. You can go to raptorsrepublic.com and buy a ticket to that. As I've said before, myself and Lewis, if you enjoy our work and you want to come not only like listen to us talk with like special guests and other people from the sports industry and some people within the sport itself, special guests will be announced, in the coming weeks. But
NBA coach though will be there.
Sure. And as far as what you want to do in between panels, I spent all my time in between panels talking to people who wanted to talk basketball with me. I spent all my time afterwards for like 2 hours talking to people who wanted to talk basketball with me, even some politics, just life stuff, as did Lewis. That's what it is. You want to come meet other people who you could make friends. You could meet people who love the Raptors the same way you do, that are interested in the more hardcore fan dynamics. It helps breed community. I remember and know people from meeting them there. I talk to them, that kind of stuff. So should be fun. Lots of basketball talk. Pre-trade deadline, February 6th, Rivoli, downtown Toronto. If you're so inclined, go purchase a ticket. All good. Okay, Lewis. Final thing I want to talk about. before we get out of here. Pascal Siakam, we've said it about 18 times on the podcast each. Who knows what the team's going to look like? Oh, what's it going to be? What do you think happens?
I'm just seeing it as wins and lessons here. No, I've only said it one time. I had to get it out more. No, he gets traded.
Are you branding? Like what? Are you trying to?
This is me. I'm gonna get a shirt that says wins and lessons. No, they have to trade him. It's absurd what this is.
You say absurd so absurdly.
With a Z.
You always have for years, and I've never called you on it, but like enough is enough.
You do it live. Like, you said, fuck it, I'm doing it live.
I get it. Like, it's Queen's University education absurd, but like, come on, dude. Excuse me?
Speak like British people.
You do. I don't. Never.
Do you know Peppa Pig is British? I found that out because they use the phrase muddy puddle. Who says muddy puddle?
What British is muddy people. Puddle?
It's a mud puddle.
Oh, I would say muddy puddle. That's a muddy puddle.
So you also speak like a Brit, just like absurd. Anyway, that was an absurd call out. But no, they have to trade him, right? Like, it's just, we've gotten to the point where it's a requirement.
We have a guest.
Yeah. Speaking about children's books.
Yeah. Okay, but like, what do you have a favorite? I know you haven't looked at it intensely. Neither of us really do, but just kind of like you've seen people talk about it. Your scan of the situation. Do you have a preference?
The Raptors need two things, skill-wise. They need circa 2016 or 2018 Klay Thompson. Like a shooting guard who can shoot on the move and can defend point guards. So Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, right? That guy's going to win so many championships when it's all said and done. So they need
Danny Green situation, yeah.
And they also need another big creating driver in the half court. Or they need the one they have, right? They need Pascal Siakam. I can't think of any guy that does both. Certainly not one that's acquirable in a trade. So I think the Raptors are not going to solve their roster problems on both ends by trading Siakam, right? I think that's impossible. So just trade him for Buddy Hield because that is one of the best offensive players of our time. And no one thinks that, but it's true. He's just so good. Indiana. I think movement shooting is multiplicative. I love Quickley. I love Barnes. I think I love BBQ. I think Hield would be an ideal offensive complement. And I think it's easier to figure out the defense, at least having followed the Raptors very closely for many years. It's easier to figure out the defense. So I think Indiana, but particularly because you need Hield to make the money work. But I'm reconciled to a trade being impossible to make the team better on the court. Unlike the New York trade they just did, which did make them better.
Yeah. That's what I think is the most common, or what I think is most realistic, is you look at the team, as you just said, there isn't, and credit to Masai and Bobby. I think the OG trade was unbelievable. I don't think that trade is available for Siakam. And I think it's the Siakam trade, unfortunately, is going to be a win for flexibility and more avenues to build going forward than it is like, ooh, it's really apparent now what the Raptors do and who they are. That's what I think. Like, the Siakam trade allows the Raptors a bit of breathing room to pay guys on the roster, to like have more flexibility, to like kind of maybe stock up some of that missing draft capital, all that kind of stuff. Start making decisions going into the future without working from like a situation where it's a season where OG is expiring, Gary is expiring, Pascal is expiring, the year after Fred expired. Just always working from this, like, our back is to the wall, the knife is out, like, oh my God, like, ah. And so I think it sucks to trade a guy who's recently been All-NBA, All-Star, who is, really been incredible offensively lately, and a guy who is the best developmental story the Raptors have ever had. He's a champion. He hit the championship winning shot for that championship on one of the most notable defenders of his era. He had a 30-point game. He closed the Warriors out with 26 and 10. He is all NBA, all-star. Like, he's a tremendous story for the Raptors. And so his trade being one that allows them like flexibility going forward is so underwhelming.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking like, we traded the big guy for this situation, for like a prospect that comes back that is like so objectively part of the future, or a pick that is just like, wow, you're like, holy smokes, that's going to be a great pick, like all that kind of stuff. It's disappointing, but I think it's more likely that it's that, when and if it happens.
If they keep him on the roster, which has, there have been times where I'm like, an extension makes sense. If they pay him his max, can they get Pascal to buy in on defense with this roster?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, I want that. If you can assume all that, that would be the best possible option. The money, obviously, I hate talking about the cap, man. But
me too, yeah.
If the money, yeah.
It's part of it.
I know.
You and I get to spend most of our time talking about basketball analysis without like the economics of basketball.
I know.
We used to do a special column where we literally only looked at basketball through like a metaphorical analysis, an analogous analysis. Minute Basketball, big shout out.
Bottles.
We have a really, this is insightful to me. Dick Nijenhuis. I'm not sure how to say your name, but quote, unless Masai gets an offer he can't refuse, Pascal will be here next year. If Pascal gets traded, it will be for players that no one has mentioned yet, end quote. This is insightful. It's like the easy position to take that not a lot of people take, quite honestly. You hear the rumors of what packages will be. Most trades that get done in the NBA have not been reported. Like the teams, but the packages like always end up different. So resigning yourself to the idea that like whoever Pascal gets traded for, it's more likely that it will include players you haven't considered than it is that it will include players that you have. Like that's just the way trades work out. And not a lot of people think about it that way, but that's the percentage play.
Yeah.
To be quite honest. As far as like an extension, Tom M says, so we're all in agreement, extend Siakam, big smiley face. I definitely see a lot of people who say like just extend Siakam. I don't know. I would be very surprised if they do. I'd be shocked. But
the Raptors front office seems to read the situation very differently from we do in terms of the value of Siakam. When we were talking about max guys earlier, zero-sum games, I think you and I and probably most people here that we have a pronunciation there.
Ninehouse. That's cool. Dick Ninehouse? That's like 10 out of 10 to me. 10 out of 10 name. Go. How many out of 10 for you?
10. When we were talking about all that, I imagine almost all of us here are in agreement. Siakam is worth a max contract in basketball terms. The front office seems to not only disagree by huge margins, right? There's a disconnect, I think, between the conversation we're having and the perspective with which the Raptors look at the situation. It's confusing.
So here's the thing to me. You could convince me, like, in baseball, they have those arbitration. Like there's an arbitrator or arbiter who comes in. The player says, he's like, I'm this good. This is my case for why I'm this good. And the team has to awkwardly say, okay, just so you know, we want you on the team, but you're bad, actually.
You're not good.
And then, so they argue. And then the arbiter says, this guy's kind of actually spitting right now. Like he's cooking you. He's making a really strong case. That's what the Blue Jays are going to have to do with Vladimir Guerrero, I believe. Awkward. players talk about how they like baseball players say like it sucks ass to do like arbitration. If you had like the hardcore Raptors FO guy come over and sit me down and say, we look at these indicators based on analytics of like defensive plus minus. We're looking at this tracking data. We're looking at all these kind of things that indicate to us a defensive downturn that might be affected by effort, but also we think is affected by a huge slew of injuries, a huge workload that we put him under, and defensive decline. And then also like, we're not sure about the catch and shoot 3-point stuff, even though like his offense, despite losing a step off like athletically, which he has, he's found like a whole slew of counters to be the most efficient inside the arc he's been since stepping into stardom, especially that usage range. He's been unbelievable offensively. He's like 60% true shooting this season, which is crazy. All this kind of stuff. We see those positives. Yes. We're lower on the positives and more steadfast on the negatives. We think he's not worth a max contract, the dollar amount, the impact amount, all that kind of stuff. Then you ask yourself, okay, what is the upside and downside to, let's say, if you think he's not worth $42 million ascending, that's, I think, the max situation. You say, we think he's worth $35 million ascending. Is the gap of like short of max, but still paid a lot of money, and max having him on the roster worth perhaps losing him? And we have a, from Hoop Goose says, I think it's not just the Raptors, but NBA in general is low on Pascal as a max player. You don't know a thing, Goose. Not a thing. You haven't been canvassing.
Let me tell you something.
Don't put this forward. So anyway, that's my thoughts. Curious what you think.
No, Joe Tully actually has a really interesting point, right? Masai said, prove it. Siakam's putting up basically identical numbers to last year, minus 1 assist a game, right? Per 36 minutes are almost the same in scoring, plus 8 percentage points in efficiency, 6 percentage points. He went from below average for a high volume scorer to above average. Is this not proving it in a very different role? Like when Masai said prove it, did he not prove it? I don't get it.
He's taken significantly less touches. He's supercharged when he does have the ball. His offense, how he's inputted himself offensively has been insane. To me, he's proven it.
Yeah.
To me, he's proven his offensive utility in different contexts, and both in a team concept and also as far as like his own usage. Like in different contexts, like he's scaled up or down, and he's been like offensively. I think a lot of people talk about like, oh, Pascal doesn't do this offensively. This makes me worry about his fit. Everyone talks about offense when they talk about fit with other teams. I'm like, he'll fit in anywhere, really, offensively. Yeah. Defensively is the consideration for me. Like, can he take that step back up to, above average where he's currently not? Like, that's where, but people, I don't know, people never seem to understand Pascal's game. But we'll see. It's a good question, though. Like, has he met it? I think Pascal has met it. You look at like, and here's the thing. Here's the thing, man. Drew Holiday got a max contract. Chris Middleton got a max contract. Why did the Bucks win despite paying that guy a max and this guy a max? Like we talked about earlier, Andre Silva, I believe the commenter was. Pascal didn't prove anything. Okay, Scotty's the biggest star, right? Would you think that Scotty could take the roster that Pascal has had and lead them to the promised land? Like you look at that team and say, oh yeah. Do you think that team is good enough? You're going to say no. Why would they surround Scotty with such a subpar roster? That's what everyone would say. So you'd look at the roster and say no. In fact, a lot of people who dislike Pascal also dislike Fred, also thought that Fred was like cratering Scotty and the team, all that kind of stuff, right? The rosters matter. Why did Drew and Chris get paid the max? Why did a team like the Bucks win a championship despite overpaying these guys? Because they had to keep good players on the roster and pay them. And the thing that actually won them the championship was the fact that they had Giannis. If the 76ers win a championship, Tobias Harris's contract doesn't matter. Tobias Harris's impact matters. Joel Embiid will be the motivator. Like contracts, like max contracts being like, and like fretting over that kind of stuff, none of it matters because you don't win unless you have that guy. If Scotty's that guy, then Pascal's contract will be tolerable. If Scotty isn't that guy, then like you have to try and keep looking for a guy if the championship is the vision or whatever. Fretting over like $8 million here, $7 million there, I don't know. But like, to me, I don't understand everybody's hang up with a guy making like $4 million more every year than you think he should. Okay, fine. I don't
You're
know.
worked up, brother. You're
Like,
worked up.
I don't get it, man. Like everyone counts pockets so much and none of it matters unless you have like that dude.
I have not been to medical school, but I don't believe therapists are supposed to get so worked up.
I'm a talking head right now. A shock jock radio personality.
So your team resign. You would prefer the Raptors keep Siakam?
I would prefer that the Raptors look very, very hard for a trade that they think allows them flexibility into the future.
Oh, you prefer they trade Siakam?
I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. What I'm saying about Pascal, fretting over money, all that kind of stuff. I think Scotty still has to like give him the room without Pascal to try and like take that big next step and be flexible going forward so that if it's not Scotty, you can also try to slowly search for the guy who helps Scotty as a 1A or a 1B or a 2B or whatever. But like, I think it makes sense to pivot. I think it makes sense to pivot while also saying like fretting over Pascal getting a max or like just short of a max. Like I could care less, man. And that kind of stuff does not end up mattering that much to teams because the only thing that matters to teams is do you have a guy who elevates everybody? And then it doesn't matter that much. If you have that guy, you have that guy. But like, we'll see. I don't care if Pascal gets 36 million a year or 42. I don't care.
So just trade for Steph Curry.
The reason the Warriors built a dynasty was because like they got the greatest contract of all time. Like Steph Curry, they're like, I don't know if his ankles work. And he was making $12 million a year. And then he won an MVP repeatedly. And then like, there you go. So yeah. OG3 says Jaylen Brown just got 60 million, but people freaking out over Pascal. And the Celtics could win the championship.
Yeah.
That's like the point. Yeah.
When you have Jason Tatum on your roster, you do whatever you can to get good players. There are no bad
Pascal make a similar amount of money too. Jaylen Brown makes more. Like it.
Yep.
Drew Holiday makes a handsome like.
So you just want as many picks as another team would be willing to offer the Raptors.
I can't say exactly what I want because it's so
I'm
nebulous.
Trying to pigeonhole you.
I know, but it's so nebulous what's out there. I think from the objective point of view, it makes the most sense considering the now and the future to be more flexible going into the future with BBQ. And then you see what happens. You're little like I said, back to the wall, the knife is out, making deals from that point of view. Yeah. I think it's more important to be flexible while also saying like, I don't care if Pascal gets 42.5 ascending or 37.5 ascending, and acting like that makes or breaks something. It's the front office's job to care about that. But like fans being like obsessed over like a guy like 4/192 or like 480/181 and being like, this is good and this is bad. I don't know, really. I just don't know. You have like the guy or you don't. And it's less like, and winning championships is less about like, oh, we paid this guy like $4 million less than he deserved. No, it's about, did that guy play well in the championship run? It doesn't matter if Tobias Harris makes 32 million or 37. Like that kind of stuff won't matter. Counting pockets to me is just like, when it comes time, sure, but counting pockets while basketball is being played all season, off season, all season, off season, all season, off season, just counting pockets nonstop. being a little cat pervert all the time. I can't do it, man. It's so rote and boring to me. And I don't think it matters as much as like the basketball on the court. We're an hour 45 into this.
Accountant.
Yeah,
I mean, we agree. Whatever happens, we're going to find out. It's been 2 years, about 2 years of transition. And we will have transitioned. Whatever happens, we will have transitioned. Finally.
Yeah.
That'll be nice.
Well, I've really enjoyed watching the team play lately. I've really liked spicy barbecue.
Yep.
I will really like barbecue plus whatever. Like, I think, like, I have had just a whale of a time watching Scotty Barnes this season. I've had a whale of a time watching Scotty Barnes last season. There's a reason I've done more analysis on Scotty Barnes than any other player. And I've done more analysis on Scotty Barnes than any other person. Outside of, like, I don't know if there's a scout for another team or for the Raptors that is like sitting on this stuff, but he's like such an interesting and fantastical player. But I'm excited to see what that turns into. Immanuel Quickley, whale of a time watching him. RJ has been interesting and fun. And while Pascal has been like one of my favorite players to watch and cover over the past however many years, so is OG. I watch New York Knicks games now. I will watch wherever Pascal goes. I watch a lot of NBA regardless, but like, hope springs eternal. It's basketball, and I like it. And the Raptors played pretty bad, ugly basketball for a while, and they're playing nicer basketball today. And they can play nicer basketball in the future, I reckon.
It's basketball, and I like it. That's that feels pretty good.
That is the mission operative of like my work.
Hey,
like
our work.
That's right. Anything you want to say before we get out of here?
No, man, always a pleasure. I look forward to these. You know, we do long ones. It's really nice to have people here with us asking us questions. I just wanted to, thank everyone for joining us. It's my first time on a live pod. Samson and I usually have done these, to silence. So appreciate everyone being here. Thank you all so much. It's really a blast.
As I mentioned, if you saw this shirt at Value Village or something like that, you would think it's the coolest thing you've ever seen. Okay? This is a Minute Basketball shirt. This is from mine and Lewis's newsletter. That's Kyle Lowry, Damian Lillard, Luka Doncic, Jimmy Butler, LeBron James, and Kawhi Leonard in a Western motif. If you come to the live pod, we have these shirts, and you can buy them for cheap. And they're like the coolest shirts you've ever seen. So we have all of the classic cliches of like the Western stuff. So something cool. We sold them initially, and then we stopped doing the newsletter because it took a lot of effort to do the newsletter, and we both needed to get paid doing other things. So anyway, but this is a really cool relic of the past. And the person who actually won the artwork, like the original artwork, is a professional scout for the Memphis Grizzlies now. So
that's true.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you to everybody for listening. Lewis, we always have just like an absolute blast talking basketball. We had some good analogies in this one.
Old analogies. I'm never talking hoop with you again without bringing up cow catchers. It's every time it's happening.
I always learn something. Like the lodestone, species for me blew my mind, man. When you pulled that out, like I couldn't believe it. This is a good one.
Appreciate you.
Yeah. So Mixal, says, thanks for the podcast. Thanks for listening. To everybody in the chat, thanks for hanging on for like an hour 45 on a Saturday afternoon. I might go play some basketball tonight if weather permits. Lewis might be there, I think. Never mind. He won't be there. He's the guy. The reason, I'll tell everybody who was here at the start of the podcast, the reason why Lewis thinks that Immanuel Quickley can just access the other side of the glass is because Lewis does that sometimes in pickup, and he thinks that you can just do that at the NBA level, but he's wrong.
He should just get a crossover like I have.
You have such a big sweeping cross into that pickup. Lewis is like, and then rumbles forward like a running back. That's his greatest play. just for anybody.
That's right.
And he could only make left-handed layups.
That's also right.
Yeah. That's an RJ Barrett thing, actually, because RJ is right-handed, but does everything left-handed, which also is me. I'm a right-handed person, but I shoot left-handed. Anyway, nobody cares about this stuff. Thanks to everybody for listening. Everybody in chat, make sure you like the video before you get out of here. People listening on the podcast app, thank you for hanging in and enjoying this. Thanks for listening. To the people who had questions during the live chat, thank you for engaging with us and listening. And whether you got into this in the morning or at night, from myself and Lewis, goodbye.